This week marks the 5-year anniversary of the Jesperi Kotkaniemi offer sheet saga, and the ending we come to, there are no winners in offer sheets.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Locked On Canadiens. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer this MLB season. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as That Maybe It's Ian. I am joined, as I always am, by Laura Saba, also known as the Actor Stick. And Laura, for these summer episodes, sometimes it's tough to find content. It's tough to talk about things. There's not a ton of news. So oftentimes what I do is I go to friend of the show, Mike Camito, and I go through his book, Habs 365, and I learn some stuff. I open a book and I learn. And today I was reminded that this week on August 28th, it is the 5-year anniversary of the offer sheet tendered and signed by one Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what that offer sheet week felt like. We'll talk about the teams trading barbs back and forth, how it was definitely not revenge, but it was absolutely revenge. We'll talk about who won that offer sheet, because I think there's a compelling case to be made for either team here. And we'll talk about how that was kind of the beginning of the end for Marc Bergevin in Montreal, leading us to what is, one of the most palatable front offices the Canadiens have had in quite some time.
Yeah.
So let's start with that offer sheet. Do you remember where you were when Jesperi Kotkaniemi was offer sheeted?
I was walking down the street. It was in front of Place Ville-Marie. I was crossing. I was like on the Robert Bourassa side, going down I remember this clearly because I was trying to cross the street, going down, trying to cross René Lévesque. Everybody knows that corner. And I literally, I stopped in the middle of crossing the street because I got that news.
Yeah. I'm glad you remember, because I remember where I was. I was on an airplane when that happened, and I couldn't connect my phone to the Wi-Fi, so I was in the dark, and my wife leans over and she goes, Jesperi Kotkaniemi just got offer sheeted. Like, no, he didn't. That doesn't make any sense. Like, no, look, and I looked, and it was one of the real insiders. I don't remember who it was, which is even funnier than where I was when I found out that the Canadiens offer sheeted Sebastian Aho. I had just moved into this apartment. I was on the phone with the cable company trying to get my internet set up, and my phone starts melting in my hand. And it's just everybody I know being like, what is happening? And just constantly being on hold with the cable company while that was happening. And I think that's really where this story starts.
Yes. And I think we should talk about that, because I think that symbolizes very much Marc Bergevin's ability to do a thing without really doing it. Right.
Yeah.
And to me, that because the offer sheet he signed Aho to was not in any way prohibitive for the Carolina Hurricanes. And in fact, it was a more team-friendly deal than a player-friendly deal. And I think he had operated on bad information. Everybody at the time. Now, this is I think this is for the benefit of a lot of newer Montreal Canadiens fans. If you came over recently because they're good or because of heated rivalry or whatever, this is what happened at the time. There was bad information because the Carolina Hurricanes owner is notorious for being cheap, and I think the willingness for them to pay Sebastian Aho was maybe greatly under-exaggerated, whatever you would say that. And so Marc Bergevin was operating on that. But it was not a bold offer sheet. In fact, he ended up doing the Carolina Hurricanes a favor, which is why it was so hilarious that they were so pressed about this a couple of years later. Was it 2 years later? Something like that?
2 years later, yep.
2 years later to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a perfect encapsulation of that moment, right? I think Marc Bergevin signed, it was a 5-year, $42.27 million offer sheet, $8.459 million per year. The reason why it was that cap hit was it was the highest cap hit before they bumped up to the next tier of compensation. For those not aware, the way offer sheets work is you sign them to whatever you want. The AAV, the average annual value of the contract, sits within certain, essentially tax brackets. Think of it that way. And within certain brackets, you owe the other team that compensation should they not choose to match. So fast forward 2 years later, the Carolina, definitely not mad Hurricanes, sign Jesperi Kotkaniemi to a 1-year offer sheet, $6.1 million per season. The kicker, there was a $20 signing bonus. Now, I didn't say that incorrectly. Not $20 million, $20. Why $20? Because that is the number Sebastian Aho wears for the Carolina Hurricanes. So it was definitely a way to poke fun at the Canadiens and their crappy offer sheet. And the thing with this offer sheet was that it actually made a lot of sense. I'm not sure if it would have walked Kotkaniemi right to UFA. I don't think he was there just yet. But it was still a 1-year deal worth 6.1 that the Canadiens did not have the space to be able to match it. They're just coming off the Stanley Cup final that they ought not to have been there. Marc Bergevin spent some money irresponsibly in that offseason. We'll talk about that in our third segment. But it worked. The Canadiens took all 7 days, decided not to match. They took the compensation, a first-round pick and third-round pick in 2022. We know that they traded one of those firsts for Christian Dvorak. Again, I want to talk about that later because there's a very important aspect of that is oft forgot when having these conversations. And then the third round pick the Canadiens actually used, and we'll talk about that in our second segment. With all of this, it at the time we were shocked when that offer sheet was tendered. But then you look back at that playoff run that the Canadiens were on, and Kotkaniemi scores a goal in the Toronto Maple Leafs series after he had been scratched, and he flashes a 4 to the press box, to the 4 players that were up there that were scratched and felt like they should have been playing. And Kotkaniemi was one of those. There was definitely an undercurrent here that he was unhappy throughout that period of time. It also goes to show that, when the contract negotiations came up that summer, the Canadiens were probably not going to pay him, right? They were probably not going to, they certainly weren't going to give him 6.1. They had the opportunity to, they didn't do it. So it was very much the Hurricanes played that aspect of this perfectly, right? It was a 1-year deal with the expectation that he would sign a contract that would make a little bit more sense, which he ended up doing. He signed an 8-year deal worth $4.82 million after that in March of 2022, which I feel like is cap circumvention. I'm definitely not crying about it, but I feel like that's a thing where it's like, oh, well, they have another deal in their back pocket. Well, that seems like it's against the rules. Again, the rules don't matter in the NHL. None of it matters. I'm definitely not upset about it still. I'd rather not have him on this team. But, Kotkaniemi turned this situation into a bunch of wealth, if not a significant part on a hockey team. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the who won section here. But Laura, what else stands out to you about that moment in Canadiens history? Because that was the first time a team had lost a player via an offer sheet in 14 years.
Yeah.
The one before that was Dustin Penner in 2007. That was the last time a team lost a player on offer sheet. What else stood out to you about that moment for the Canadiens?
It was so unnecessary for the Carolina Hurricanes to do it. It was just insanely, if you were going to do it, at least do it for a player you really wanted, because they didn't really want him. They just wanted to mess up the Canadian cap.
I think they did. There are rumors that they were very interested in Kotkaniemi.
But
why? I don't have the answer to that.
Were they not there for the 20-game stint in Laval? Were they not there for the whole preamble to all of this?
I think all of these teams look at players that they like who aren't doing well, and they think I can fix him. And they thought they could fix him. And it looked like briefly in his time in Carolina that might have been true.
Didn't he score when he first came back to the Bell Center his first game against the Habs? It was he scored at least one goal.
And it was what did you make? Because at the time when he first came back, there was a lot to do about Canadiens fans booing Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
Yeah.
And I remember being he chose to leave this hockey team. That's in sports, the main reason you would boo a former player that you used to cheer for, right?
Here's the thing. He was also a child. He was very immature. I mean, I think that was evident, by the fact that it did not work out with the Montreal Canadiens. And that is a forgotten aspect of this. They both screwed up his development, and he didn't do the work, right? Like it was a two-way street there. But if I'm 22, 23 at the time, if I'm that young and somebody's telling me I'm going to give you $6 million, of course I'm going to take it. If somebody's that young and is in dispute with his current hockey team about his usage, his value, and his contract, and somebody's going to show up and be like, we're going to stick it to him with this $20 signing bonus, of course you're going to sign it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that it was, I mean, I would have done it probably, it's $6 million. It's $6 million. And then you know that your next qualifying offer has to be that much.
Right. And
right?
So they backed up the truck and they gave him over $32 million on his next contract.
Exactly.
That he's still under, by the way. He's still under that until 2030.
Yeah. And that's, like to me, like that was a way to get paid, right? Of course you're going to sign it. Now, that also, I feel like all of those things, like him not working hard enough, him signing that offer sheet, like he would not have fit in with this locker room.
No, I don't think so either. I also I have a hard time of being like, where does he fit like schematically with the Canadiens? I want to make one point on your point about him being immature, and then we'll move to our next segment. Jesperi Kotkaniemi was the first player in any of the North American major sports to be born in the year 2000. He was the first of that generation. He was the youngest player in the league at the time that he broke into the league with the Canadiens. And he was the first of the 2000s babies to be playing in North American sports. So the point about immaturity is so well taken. Like it's so, I think we look back on it and we go, oh yeah, he was a baby doing baby stuff.
Yes.
And that's what ended up happening. All right, let's leave that there. When we come back, we'll pick a winner. Who won this offer sheet saga between the Montreal Canadiens and the Carolina Hurricanes? One of them has a cup, but it almost seems like in spite of this. We'll get into all of that when we come back on Locked On Canadiens. Locked On Canadiens is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with Daily Dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. If you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get a chance to make your prediction before first pitch. When I say every game has someone capable of going deep, I especially mean every game that includes Kyle Schwarber and the Philadelphia Phillies. They're red hot. He hits a walk-off dinger. That would be where my Daily Dinger selection would be going. Can't go wrong with Randy Arozarena out in Seattle. He had 2 home runs the other day. So, are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. All right. Welcome back. Hey, let's get into the compensation of this because I think it will help guide our conversation about who won this offer sheet saga. Montreal gets a first and a third round pick from the Carolina Hurricanes. They trade that first for Christian Dvorak. I want to talk about this a little bit more in the next segment, but the challenge here is that the Canadiens traded that pick conditionally to the Carolina Hurricane, or to the Arizona Coyotes for Christian Dvorak. And what that meant was the Coyotes were going to get whatever was the worst pick between Montreal's and Carolina's, which means when Marc Bergevin traded for Christian Dvorak, he essentially put both of his first-round picks into purgatory until the draft. He made it impossible for them to move, which, in retrospect, probably saved the Canadiens bacon because their own pick became the first overall pick and Juraj Slafkovsky. And I just keep thinking back, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in the final segment, that if Marc Bergevin had access to that pick, he would have traded it, and we would be talking about a different hockey team right now.
Yes.
But with all that said, the Canadiens' third round pick they got from the Carolina Hurricanes as compensation became Adam Engstrom, which is very funny. That is one of the more highly touted prospects the Canadiens have, especially on the blue line.
Yeah.
The Carolina Hurricanes have gotten one season from Jesperi Kotkaniemi that was better than his rookie year. He had 43 points in 22-23. He had 34 points as a rookie with the Canadiens. He did not play in their cup run at all. He played 0 games in the playoffs, and he only played 42 games last year for the Hurricanes, barely making it over the threshold to be on the Stanley Cup and have a day with the cup. But he has it. He's a cup champion. We can't take that away from him. With all that said, Laura, the dust has settled on this. Who's won this offer sheet?
I still think it's the Habs.
Explain.
I think that Adam Engstrom, whether he on the Habs or whether he gets traded, is going to prove to be a more vital part of whatever team he is on over the course of his career than Jesperi Kotkaniemi. He was really important in the Canadiens' playoff Stanley Cup run, but he was not even existing in the Carolina Hurricanes one, right?
Yeah.
And that one was an overachiever, whereas the Carolina Hurricanes one was a legitimate Stanley Cup contending team winning a Stanley Cup. So I think over the course of their careers, I feel like Adam Engstrom, which is a real prize in this situation, is going to be more valuable, like just a more key piece to whatever team he's on. And he will be an NHLer. I really think so. I also think that Christian Dvorak, as much as, that was not like, I think people were like looking at him as like a second line center. Like he needs to be the second line center. And I think that was the problem. Like he came advertised as such by that front office, and he was never going to be able to live up to that. Very much like the Drouin thing, like the this team did a lot of that kind of stuff, being like,
They sure
Gomez, like we're promising you this thing that's not really the thing, right? So this is why when we get these transparent quotes from the current front office, a lot of us are like still doubt them. But I think what Christian Dvorak did was much like Patrick Laine last year. Without Christian Dvorak, you weren't making the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Like if you remove that element, so that like huge step that they took by losing to Washington so bitterly in those 5 games that prepared them for like an even better run this year, that put and like this is going to prepare them for like their future runs. I think that gave more to the Montreal Canadiens than Carolina got from Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The Dvorak part of this is so fascinating to me because I think you're right? I think they got him to be the second line center, and Christian Dvorak was like, that's not really my thing. Great third line center. I last year we became Christian Dvorak truthers on this program. We were banging the drum for this player that he was being played as a fourth liner and he was excelling in that role, and they would kind of be sunk without him. And wouldn't you know it, that line was excellent in the playoffs against Washington.
They were really excellent down the stretch. But early in the season, in like October, November, we were like, what is this guy even bringing? Right. We changed our tune. We did, but we have to be honest, like early in the season, and he himself wasn't playing that well. But, overall, the previous season, not the one we just lived through, the one we just, survived, the one we just enjoyed.
Yeah.
He started out as a non-factor and then became a really big factor. In fact, didn't he score 2 goals when we were watching them in person?
I think he had 3 points.
He had 3 points.
We were like Christian Dvorak masterclass. We couldn't believe the game we saw from him in person in Buffalo. Yeah, I think his underlying numbers were always good last season for Montreal, and it took a while for like the visual appreciation of it to catch up. That often happens with a lot of these analytics type players. So like I even taking out the Christian Dvorak aspect of this, like looking at Carolina, they're stuck with Kotkaniemi for, I believe, 4 more seasons. And what's funny is the cap hit 4.82 for like a fourth liner is just like a moderately too expensive fourth liner, right? It's not like if they were paying him $4.82 million and he was a healthy scratch, the last few years, we'd be like, that's crazy. One of the worst contracts in the league. But as the cap is going up, we need to recalibrate our understanding, and he becomes a luxury sort of player for them. Again, they didn't even hit the salary cap last year. Like they weren't at it. So it's not like it's killing them for him to be scratched. He's a perfectly fine option to come in and be a replacement player for Carolina. But I just, as our buddy Scott would say, a perfectly cromulent bottom six forward to bring in and play in any sort of scenario that you need him to play down there. I don't know who wins this other than Jesperi Kotkaniemi from a financial standpoint, right? He gets generational wealth. The Hurricanes get their just desserts in their revenge search against the Canadiens. And the Canadiens got the perfect excuse to move on from their general manager, who kind of screwed them towards the end of his time in Montreal. So, like, I at the end of this, it's so funny. I think of this in a very similar way to the Subban for Weber trade, in that in the moment it felt so cataclysmic. And when the dust settles all these years later, we go, oh, that really wasn't important at all. Like it didn't really move the needle anyway. And we kind of just freaked out for a lateral move for 4 years. Like, I wonder if Christian Dvorak outperformed Jesperi Kotkaniemi in his time in Montreal. Like, I think so. I think I would rather have the version of Christian Dvorak we got than the version of Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
I agree.
But it's, again, like, the margins of victory here are slim. Like, it's not like one team crushed the other one. It's like, all right, at the end of this, was any of this worth doing? I don't know. I don't know. Although at the end of it, Carolina has a cup almost in spite of these decisions.
Yes.
Not because of them, but they overcame spending almost $5 million on a vanity project in Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So very interesting ending for that saga. All right, we'll step aside one last time. When we come back, we'll talk about the sort of snowball effect that became for the Canadiens once they got out of the Cup final, and all of the decisions that followed sort of made no sense, and it ended Marc Bergevin's time in Montreal. We'll talk about that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. All right, welcome back, Laura. I'm going to give you a quick highlight reel, mixtape of Marc Bergevin's time after the Canadiens got eliminated in the Stanley Cup final. This is the summer of 2021. So they drafted Logan Mailloux in the first round after he was convicted of doing some pretty stupid stuff, some pretty egregious things. I'm not relitigating it. If you have opinions on Logan Mailloux that I don't want to hear, guess what? I don't want to hear them. Nobody does. We don't want to relitigate this. But drafting him was inherently a mistake. We all know that. The Canadiens admitted as much in the aftermath. It was not a good idea. It was a completely self-inflicted wound after a spring of just incredible goodwill being built up with your fan base and spending it immediately. They signed Mike Hoffman in free agency, 3 years, $4.5 million. They also signed, they extended Yoel Armia for a little bit more total money, even though it was less per year. They also signed David Savard, who maybe too much money, but I liked having him around. Traded for Christian Dvorak, first and a second. The first was the Hurricanes. The Canadiens actually added a second round pick to that. That ended up being used, I believe, in a trade that got them there was a trade with LA that got them an actual good defenseman with that second round pick. Again, I mentioned that because the first pick was conditional. It was effectively tied up all year, and the Canadiens couldn't touch it, which was Marc Bergevin saving him from himself, because I think he would have traded that to try to get the wheels back on the season, and it would have been a cataclysmic mistake. So they couldn't do that. They basically had no first-round picks all year, even though they had two of them. Go figure. The first time Marc Bergevin ever acquires a first-round pick, he can't use either of them. Marc Bergevin then extends Nick Suzuki in October, 8 times $7.875. That's the contract he's currently on. It's one of the steals in the National Hockey League. And then just over a month later, he's fired. So that was the summer that was for Marc Bergevin. Can you remember a general manager's last dying breath being this awful? Just genuinely tumultuous?
I mean, I'm sure there have been. Like, there have been probably worse scandals. I just think it's wild that in all of that, he signed Nick Suzuki to an incredible deal.
It's fascinating to go back and remember, like, Oh, he must have signed that before the Cup final. Like, my retconning of it is like, oh, it must have been when things were good, right? Traded for Eric Stahl. We're building a team that can go on a run. Sign Nick Suzuki. No, it was like after everything exploded. The season hadn't. I think the season was just about to start, because I think it was delayed slightly because the Cup final went into July. But yeah, it's the funniest part of all of this. The last move he made has set the Canadiens up for success for decades because of how great that contract was.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's truly, truly wild. And I think, there were a lot of problems with that, but I think the way they handled the Logan Mailloux thing too.
Yeah.
It was like, obviously, as Habs fans, we weren't happy, right? Then he threw Trevor Timmins under the bus, made him respond to the media, didn't take those questions, talks about character all the time, and he put his head of scouting, like, and Trevor Timmins' face, like, it was like deer in headlights, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, and it was not well received by the rest of the league either.
No, I think I think that the way that he sent Trevor Timmins out there, I think that is why he is not a general manager in the league anymore. And I don't think I am genuinely of the belief that he may never get another opportunity because of what he did that day.
You think?
Why does he keep getting these advisor jobs instead of getting a general manager job?
Oh, I mean, he messed up with the Montreal Canadiens, that too.
Yeah. You're telling me, the Detroit Red Wings have a vacancy right now. Marc Bergevin played there. He knows the market. He understands what's going on. I almost would think he would do a good job there. I think he might be able to turn that around.
Maybe.
But I don't think anybody wants to touch him after what he did to a guy like Trevor Timmins. I will never. That video, the thing you mentioned of him looking like a deer in headlights. The silence after he was asked, "Why did you make this pick anyway?" was him being like, "I didn't make the pick, guys. It's the lame duck general manager that doesn't have a contract, isn't going to be extended, and is on his way out and doesn't care about what happens to this team." Genuinely, it's one of, and we can look back on it now because Jeff Molson has done a great job of repairing the Canadiens just as a structure, right? As what makes them a hockey club. But that was letting Marc Bergevin conduct that draft at all is one of the largest failings of Jeff Molson in the last little while. The guy was not going to be extended. He didn't want to stay. You didn't want to keep him. Why are we stringing this out any further?
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense. And I think like I said, Molson's done a great job of repairing that, of making people happy with the current system and not necessarily thinking about those things, nor should we dwell on them, right? Like, it's in the past. We can't do anything about it. But it was genuinely one of the silliest things that they could have done was let this guy lead this team and make crucial decisions. Maybe if there's a new general manager, the Canes don't offer sheet Kotkaniemi. Yeah. Maybe this doesn't even happen. Who knows? Maybe the new general manager that steps in just says, "You know what, Carolina, let's work on a trade for Kotkaniemi. I'll send him to you. He doesn't want to play here. We might not need him. Go ahead, take him." Yeah. So I genuinely look at that Bergevin summer. It was the beginning of the end. By U.S. Thanksgiving, he was gone. I think it was a couple of days after U.S. Thanksgiving, he got released. They brought in Jeff Molson, which means we were also in 5 years of this iteration of the Canadiens.
Yeah.
And it's taken them 5 years to get back to a legitimate point of relevancy across the league. But it's in such a less flimsy way than it was in the past that I think this will last.
Yeah. I really hope so. I mean, we talked about it on the last episode. This is the last time we get to enjoy a season before we start white knuckling it all the way through.
This is it.
And it's not like the Atlantic is getting any worse, right? And so the Canadiens' time to be good, everybody else is also good, which is really, really frustrating, or getting better, right? But I think this front office, for me, it symbolizes the opposite of that, because the chaos is not there. The transparency is there. The chaos is not there. And they are bold. Like, I say this so many times. Like, it could be one of my catchphrases on this show. This front office is bold, right? But because we saw Marc Bergevin make so many third line, fourth line trades and acquisitions, he loves those guys. And it's like, no, you need to. And I think having an agent there, plus somebody who has a lot of experience in scouting and management, like, the evaluation of talent is a lot more accurate.
Yeah. Marc Bergevin loved to tinker. He was constantly adding third, fourth line guys, third pairing defensemen. I think that one year where Bergevin got like Steve Ott and Andreas Martinson and Dwight King, I think in that one year he got more fourth liners than this front office has in their 5 years together. Like, they don't add those guys just for the sake of adding them.
Yeah.
Right. They in fact they added Phil Deneau.
Mm-hmm.
Is that maybe the end of that list?
Yeah, because Joe Veleno was a free agent signing.
Sure. Yeah, there was no trades for any of those guys, for sure.
Correct. And I think that was the thing. The one really bold thing he did was the Subban for Shea Weber trade. And that was it. Everything else was, even the Pacioretty trade that got us Nick Suzuki, that was also one of those, like, I'm just trying to get rid of him in the middle of the night kind of things.
Yeah. A lot of people forget that. Like, a lot of people like to point out, well, he didn't even want Nick Suzuki. He wanted this other player. That to me is like small potatoes compared to the fact that the trade was made at like 12:30 at night. And people are like, well,
on
it was
Sunday.
and people are like, well, it was with Vegas. They're in the West. That's still 9:30 on a Sunday for their. What are you talking about? Like, it was very clear they were trying to hide that. They were trying to sweep that deal under the rug, as if there was a way to do that in Montreal. One, two, as if there was a way to do that in Montreal in a trade that involved the captain. Like, it was baffling to me that they ever tried to do that, because it was so plainly obvious that that's exactly what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it so that none of us were talking about the fact that in the middle of the night they traded the captain of the Montreal Canadiens for parts. Right? Parts that ended up being great. Let's be realistic, right? Like, Tatar was great in Montreal, and Nick Suzuki still great in Montreal and will be great in Montreal. But, like, man, they tried to hide that, and I find that so funny.
Can we just talk for 1 second before we go about how great it is to have Nick Suzuki in Montreal? Like, I always look at this and I'm like, how did we get so lucky?
Well, because, we had to be very unlucky for quite some time. Like, it was, I don't like to. A lot of people do the whole, well, he didn't even want Nick Suzuki in that trade. Yeah, but he got Nick Suzuki. Like, I've come around to the point of being like, that's probably true for a lot of trades.
Yes.
And we just get hung up on this one because it's our team, and it was,
because the alternative was like Cody Glass or something.
And Eric Brandstrom, right? Like, those were the guys that were going to come back. But it is what it is. So look, that all week we'll be celebrating in a sense. But we'll be talking about the 5-year anniversary of this offer sheet. I'm sure you'll see things around the internet by other Habs fans. Let us know, what are your thoughts on this offer sheet in retrospect? How do you feel now? Who won? Do you care that Jesperi Kotkaniemi has a Stanley Cup ring? I don't necessarily care. I think it's kind of cool. Like, I'm still rooting for the guy. There's no reason to be like, I hate him forever. I'll boo him still, but
I don't hate him at all. I don't like he was a kid, you know what I mean? Like, he ended up really just like making a really, really good choice, I guess. It turned out to make him rich, and he doesn't even have to work that hard. You know what I mean? Like,
he has to work half the games.
Don't all of us love that? Like, imagine being that rich and like not having to work so hard.
I don't care that a good thing happened to him. It should have happened to me. Anyway, we'll leave that there. We want to thank you for logging into this episode of Locked On Canadiens, for subscribing wherever you get your podcast, doing that supports us here on the show, and make sure you don't miss an episode. Hey, next week we go back to full episodes for all week. I think we'll start. I think next week is actually a full five episode week, and we'll be that way. Like the holidays, we'll probably go back to a few a week because we're human beings too. But realistically, we'll be in 5 a week until the off season next year. So come hang out with us, share the show with people you like, maybe even people you don't like, people you wish would be offer sheeted. They can come hang out too. That's fine. Subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts, and here on YouTube. Now on video, we sing to you the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 YouTube channel, and on audio, check out Locked On NHL for your second listen. You can find the show everywhere we're posting things at Locked On Canadiens, Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok primarily. LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com. Best way to send us your mailbag questions. We do a mailbag every Friday. Get those questions in. We love to hear from you guys. For Laura Saba at the Active Stick, I'm Ian Boisvert at Maybe It's Ian. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Enjoy.